Hi all, in this video we will go through the SQL Server sequence concept. Here SQL Server 2012 introduced sequence. Before that we do not have sequence concept in SQL Server, whereas we have identity concept. So in ANSI SQL 2003, standard method of generating IDs is nothing but sequence here. In SQL, this sequence solves many problems that are not solved by the identity property, and simply we can say a sequence is not an identity. Let's talk about identity property of a table before going to the sequence. Here identity is a TSQL, nothing but transact SQL table property inherited from the whole CBase or Unix. It counts the number of insertions or attempts, not even the successes on one particular machine. So whatever the transaction that we are doing, even whether it's succeeded or failure, the identity property increments the value. This goes back to how the files were managed on Unix systems in the early 1970s. In those days, we needed recorded numbers to locate the data, and we recorded the same thing for all delete operations. Nothing but we taken a flag. The flag will be updated for all the deletes. During the data cleanup, we do deletes of all those data based on the flag that we defined. So this is how we did in our earlier days. And obviously identity increments its value from physical insertion to physical insertion. So where we can define some gaps, but not that much big gaps or no gems. And identity is not a column, it's a just table property. That means it cannot be worked as a key by its definition. Means in general the key is nothing but a set of columns. Those will be used to identify a row uniquely in a table. Even identity has unique values in a table, but it's not a proper key to identify a particular record. And it is not an integer. However, we can take integer fields as an identity, so we cannot do meaningful math on it, and it is not deterministic. That means if we insert a set of or more number of records into a table, the rows will be inserted one at a time in an order determined by the indexes or internal state of the hardware and number of servers sessions that we configure. Means nowhere we give guarantee that the so and so values have so and so identity value, and some of the records will get some other identity value. It's based on how the internal system works. And coming to the sequence and series. So sequence is a list of numbers. Here I am giving few some sample orders. Here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a simple sequence. It increments a specific value. Nothing but each and every value has some specific property on its next value and it's on its previous value. And other sample is 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5. Here if you see this order, the order is 2, it's 2, it's 4, it's 6. These are all even numbers, and 1, 3, 5 odd numbers. So it is maintaining some specific order. So we are calling these as a sequence. And compared to the first sequence, second sequence is entirely different sequence. And next thing is series. Here a series is a sum of numbers. It's a very simple example of a series, 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 4 plus, so which converges to the value of 2, not exactly 2, merely 2. Here the order of terms can change the limit to which the series converges, or it might not. Here if you observe these two, sequence and series are closely related to each other, but sequence is not somewhat like series. And let's see about sequence create statement. This sequence create statement is a schema level object, and it is accessible to any user, and it is not part of a table, and it is not a procedure that belongs to a one user. A user can invoke the sequence with a special syntax that is used wherever an integer value of a sequence data type would work. So this is the syntax of sequence statement. So here the next value for database name, schema name, sequence name over partition, it represents nothing but it's a syntax to display the next sequence value. And to create a sequence, this is a syntax: create sequence, schema name, sequence name as built-in integer type, nothing but we can take user defined integer type, and start with what value we need to start. We want to start increment by minimum value or no minimum value, maximum value, no maximum value, whatever value we can give, and cycle repeated values and cache. Now let's see each and every property in detail. Here details about sequence parameters. One more thing, sequence numbers are generated outside the scope of the current transaction. These will be consumed whether the transaction using the sequence number is committed or rollback. And the properties built-in integer type. A sequence can be defined as an integer type, that means tiny int, small int, integer and big int, but it also allows decimal values and numericals data types. We can also use a user defined type that is based on one of the allowed types. If no data type is provided for our sequence, by default big int is the default sequence. In general, don't use big int sequence unless it's really need a range of very maximum 2 power 63 to the some value. And again, this is the range of the big int sequence, where if you want to nothing but if our system is capable to maintain this many number of records, go with big int. Otherwise don't go with a big int, go with the data type wherever it matches to our application. And by default this is the largest safest value in the problem space. And start with this is the first value written by the sequence. The start value must be a value between the minimum and maximum value, whatever the values that we are giving for the range of sequence. The default start value for a new sequence is the minimum value for an ascending sequence and the maximum value for descending sequence. Means suppose the minimum start value means if it is an ascending sequence, whatever the minimum value that we are giving, suppose if we are building a sequence for the range 1 to 100, then the minimum value, nothing but the default value is 1. Suppose if you are building a sequence in the descending sequence, then the default value would be the maximum value, that is 100. And simple note, this is a constant, no function, not a function call. And another property, increment by. This value is either to increment or decrement if negative. Nothing but decrement only comes into picture if the value is negative. The value of the sequence for each call to the next value for. If the increment is the negative value, the sequence is descending, otherwise it is ascending. The increment cannot be 0, obviously the default increment for our sequence would be 1. And again this parameter is also a constant, not a function call. And other mean value and no mean value. So this mean and max value defines the boundaries for our sequence, and the default minimum value for a new sequence is the minimum value of the data type of the sequence. And this is 0 for the tiny int data type and a negative number for all other data types, whatever the default minimum value for a new sequence that we are considering. And no minimum value is probably a really bad design choice, probably wanted to 0 or 1. And maximum value, it specifies the bound for the sequence, again same as min value. The default maximum value for a new sequence is the maximum value of the data type of the sequence, as we discussed as a big int. if we don't specify the maximum value, nothing but no max value, is probably another bad design. If you are going to use this create a tag number, you have to worry about the overflowing the length of your string. And if you are casting the numeric data type to string for tag numbers, you will want to be sure that the numbers do not overflow in the conversion, and probably we do not need the upper limit of the data type. And the next is cycle and no cycle property. This property specifies whether the sequence should restart from the minimum value once the maximum value reaches, or maximum value for the descending sequence, or else it will throw an exception when its minimum or maximum value is exceeded. The default cycle option for new sequences is no cycle. Note that again here the cycling restarts from the minimum or maximum value, not from the start value. And another property is a cache, no cache. Here the cache specifies that till specified constant the values will be incremented into cache to reduce input output cost. If we specify no cache, it will make input and output on disk. Suppose take an example, if cache is 50, specifies that till 50 the values are already incremented into cache to reduce input output, and this will be used by the sequence. Here another thing is, in real time there are few cases where we strictly follow the sequence, but we may lose all of the numbers in cache in the event of some major failure or some other cache release. So while it is faster, it is also a dangerous. And other property over order by class. As I said earlier, identity is not deterministic if we have set of data to be inserted, whereas sequence has a way to fix this problem. We can order the sequence if another process is accessing the sequence object at the same time. The numbers returned could have gaps. Means if we specify the order by class using overclass, we can give the specific order for the input data, what values needs to be given first, nothing but sequence assigned first, and the later values will assign with the later numbers. Here an overclass applied to the next value for function does not support the partition by or the row range subclasses for obvious reasons. And multiple calls to the next value for function for the same sequence generated in a single statement must all use the same overclass definition. Again, this is obvious thing. And multiple calls to the next value for function, the different sequence generators in a single statement can have different overclass definitions. They are separate schema objects again. And if all calls to the next value for function in a select statement specifies the overclass, and order by class may be used in the select statement, again the sequence is a separate schema object. Here the overclass is allowed with the next value for function when used in the select statement or insert select statement. The next value for function is not allowed in update or merge statements. It only works for select and insert statements to insert the data or access the data. And now we will see sample examples on sequence, how the sequence works and everything. Thank you. We will see those sample examples in our another video.